Bangladesh continues to battle devastating floods caused by heavy monsoon rains. Officials say the death toll has now risen to 23, with millions of people stranded and in need of food, clean water and medicine.
Wading through muddy floodwaters, Abdul Halim surveys what's left of his home. The 65-year-old farmer's mud hut was swept away in the middle of the night by a 3-meter-high surge of floodwater.
I used to live in this hut with my family. A strong current destroyed the house, so I sent my family to a shelter. There's no way of living here anymore.
The floodwaters have left many people isolated and in urgent need of food, clean water, medicine and dry clothes, particularly in remote areas where blocked roads have hampered rescue and relief efforts.
There are no goods and no water. Barely anyone has come with the relief deep inside the villages. You have to physically go close to the main road to collect it. When was the last time you had rice? I had some rice 2 days ago. Since then, I've barely eaten anything.
The city of Feni in southeast Bangladesh is one of the hardest hit in what's being described as one of the country's worst floods in living memory. Since last Wednesday, water has inundated entire districts, leaving millions of people, many of them children, in need of shelter and humanitarian assistance. It's yet another challenge since Bangladesh was gripped by violent protests earlier this month, causing then Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to flee to neighbouring India. Her departure plunged Bangladesh into more chaos, until Nobel Peace Prize laureate Muhammad Yunus stepped in to lead an interim government. He says all necessary measures are being taken to ensure a swift return to normality for flood victims. Meanwhile, some 500,000 people have sought refuge in thousands of shelters in the flood-hit districts, with the Army, Air Force, Navy and Border Guards assisting in relief operations. Bangladesh is one of the world's most climate-vulnerable countries. The nation of 170 million people is crisscrossed by hundreds of rivers and has seen frequent floods in recent decades. Even as the waters now slowly subside, scientists say climate change will make such catastrophic events even more frequent.
Now let's get more on that story from Dr. Farhana Sultana. She's a professor at the Department of Geography and the Environment at Syracuse University. Dr. Sultana, the floods have hit Bangladesh as it's going through an extraordinary transition. Did such a massive flooding take people by surprise?
Thank you for having me. And yes, this is a massive flooding event in many, many decades. And the floods were quite rapid in their onset. So as you mentioned, there's over 5 million people who are marooned or stranded and devastated across 11 districts. 23 reported deaths now, but those figures will rise. And relief cannot reach many people as communication towers have gone down, bridges washed away, roads are submerged, and the water currents are quite strong to be able to navigate to reach people. So what caused this is on August 20th, just a few days ago, there are 3 main reasons why this happened and happened so rapidly. So there was a dam breach in India that meant a lot of floodwater came in swiftly and without warning. This impacted several 100,000 people overnight on the eastern part. And now with more riverine water that's coming as more dams and barrages are opened in India upstream, there will be more riverine water coming. But this also combined with a second reason, which is heavy monsoonal rainfall in this monsoon climate. So what we see is that across the country, there's been heavy rain and a low pressure over the Bay of Bengal, which prevented rivers from draining very quickly. But these are expected to shift over time and hopefully improve, but the devastation has just begun.
Now, is the monsoon this time round much stronger than usually?
It has been quite heavy this month or in the last few days, but we are a monsoonal seasonal climate. So it's not unnatural to get large amount of water in a short period of time. But there are several factors that I mentioned, right? In terms of drainage, in terms of preparedness, in terms of the volume that arrives over what amount of time.
Now, how is the new interim government helping people right now?
Well, the interim government has only been in place for about 3 weeks, right? They were placed by popular demand after a student-led mass uprising ousted the former dictator regime that ruled the country with an iron fist for 15 years. So the interim government effectively inherited quite a big mess. But what they did was they galvanized very swiftly. They mobilized various divisions and wings of the government and the defense and military forces, but as well as the civilian corps. So there you have several tens of millions of people who have come forward in a galvanized, united country, and millions of dollars of aid are being raised right now. But we do know that the damage is quite extensive. It will run into the billions, but the interim government has been very active in raising funds, mobilizing them, and in terms of rescue, relief, recovery, and hopefully rehabilitation in the coming weeks.
Briefly, if you can, does Bangladesh need international help, and what can the international community do to help Bangladesh right now?
So I think the international community has an opportunity to ally with the Bangladesh people who are incredibly mobilized and galvanized and wish to have neighborly relations, as well as form partnerships in flood control, in climate change, given that, climate change is a big issue. But I think what the international community can do right now is actually listen to Bangladeshis, not to anyone else who may have propaganda, setting agendas or other political agendas in play, assess the situation, and assist the interim government and the people with rapid assistance and humanitarian aid, and also loan forbearance, if possible.
Dr. Farhana Sultana there, Professor at the Department of Geography and the Environment at Syracuse University. Thank you very much for this insight.
Thank you for having me.